In 1979, a teenager named Jadav Payeng found hundreds of dead snakes on a barren sandbar in the Brahmaputra River. In the northeastern Indian state of Assam, a flood had stranded them, but the sun had killed every one because there was not a single tree to give them shade. This was devastating for him. His love for animals made him plead with the forest officials to plant trees there. But according to the officials, the land was dead, and they could not help. So instead of losing hope, Jadav made a decision that would consume the next 40 years of his life. He walked out onto that empty sand, alone, and began to plant a forest by hand, one tree at a time. The island, to understand what Jadav did, you first have to understand the strange and fragile place he came from. Jadav Payeng was born in 1959 into the missing tribe of Assam in the far northeast of India. His home was Majuli, and Majuli is like almost nowhere else on Earth. It is the largest river island in the world. Majuli sits in the middle of the Brahmaputra, one of the great rivers of Asia. A river so powerful, it behaves less like a river and more like a slow, relentless force of nature. Every year the monsoon arrives, the river swells, and it tears at the island's edges. Land that stood firm in the spring is simply gone by the autumn, dissolved into the current, and carried away. This is not a rare disaster on Majuli. It is the ordinary rhythm of life. Over the last 70 years, the island has lost more than half of its total area to the water. And some who study it believe the whole of Majuli could vanish entirely within a few decades, swallowed completely by the river that made it. Jadav grew up watching this slow drowning happen in real time. His father was a poor buffalo trader, and the family lived close to the land and the water. The floods came, the fields disappeared, and where the water pulled back it left behind bare sandbars. Wide, flat stretches of pale sand where nothing grew and nothing lived. To a boy growing up there, this was simply how the world worked. Land was not something permanent. The river gave it, and the river took it back whenever it pleased. There was no fighting it. It was a fact of existence as fixed as the sky. And then, in 1979, the river left something on the sand that a teenage boy could not simply accept and walk away from. Plenty of people would have seen those dead snakes, felt a flash of pity, and moved on. To understand why Jadav could not, you have to understand where he came from and what he had already been losing his whole life. He belonged to the Mising tribe, an indigenous community whose entire way of seeing the world treats the land, the river, and the creatures on it as part of one connected family, not as scenery and not as pests. To a boy raised that way, hundreds of animals dying together in the open was not a minor cruelty of nature. It was a wound, but there was something even closer to home in it. Jadav had spent his whole childhood watching the river devour Majuli, swallowing the land a little more every single year, and he understood, even as a teenager, that a barren, treeless island was a doomed one. The roots were gone, so there was nothing to hold the soil, so the water took whatever it wanted. The dead snakes were not just dead snakes to him. They were proof of what a world without trees does to everything living in it, his island and his own people included. That was the thought he could not shake, and it was the thought that sent him out onto the sand alone. One tree a day he started with bamboo. Around 20 seedlings, pushed by hand into the bare, hot sand that every adult and every expert had already written off as good for nothing. The early years were brutal, and it is worth sitting with just how brutal they were, because this is the part of the story that is easy to skip past. There was no irrigation. So Jadav carried water across the sand by hand, day after day, to keep those first fragile seedlings from dying in the heat. He had no help from anyone. He had no salary and no funding. He had no organization behind him, no title, no support, and no one watching to see whether he succeeded or gave up. There was only a young man, a stretch of dead sand, the enormous, indifferent river, and the small, repeated act of pushing one more plant into the ground and keeping it alive. In those first years, before any of the trees were big enough to drop their own seeds, every single sapling depended entirely on him. If he did not tend it, it died. So he tended each one, personally, like a nurse tending patients who could not survive on their own. There is a detail here that reveals exactly what kind of person he was. Around 1980, the local social forestry division launched its own tree planting scheme on a nearby sandbar, a proper government project. Jadav joined it and worked on it as a paid laborer. But in 1983, after they had planted a few hundred acres, the project was declared finished and abandoned. And every other worker packed up their things and went home. Jadav did not go home. He stayed. He kept planting on his own, and he took it upon himself to tend not only his own trees, but all the trees the departing workers had left behind. That became his entire life. Every day, year after year after year, he walked out to the sand and he planted. He gave up his schooling to do it. He lost all count of how many thousands of trees he pushed into the ground. He simply refused to stop. Through the heat and the floods, and the years when absolutely no one knew or cared what he was doing out there. Building a forest from nothing here is something most people do not realize about what Jadav accomplished. Growing a forest out of dead sand is not simply a matter of scattering seeds and waiting for rain. A barren sandbar is not a garden waiting to happen. It is a hostile, lifeless place. And to bring it to life, Jadav had to learn, by trial and error and with no formal training, how to build an entire living system from nothing. He learned by watching and failing. He learned which trees could take root in that difficult soil, and which ones simply withered and died. He moved beyond bamboo, planting cotton trees and valkal and arjun and many other native species, slowly assembling the mix of plants that could survive there. But he understood something deeper too, that a collection of trees is not the same thing as a forest. A real forest is a web, a dense network of living things, all depending on one another. The soil and the insects and the birds and the animals and the plants, all knitted together. And so he set about building the whole web, not just the trees. He even went to work on the ground itself. The bare sand had none of the richness that living things need. So to transform that dead sand into soil that could actually hold and feed life, he is said to have gathered and carried in earthworms, seeding the ground with the small creatures that build fertile earth from the bottom up. And slowly, against everything the experts had told him, it worked. The bamboo took hold and spread. The trees grew tall, and eventually they grew tall enough to produce their own seeds. And once that happened, something wonderful began. The forest started to plant itself. It began to spread on its own, no longer entirely dependent on one man and his hands. The roots of all those trees reached down and gripped the loose sand, binding it together, holding the ground in place against the pull of the river. Shade appeared where there had never been shade in living memory. And once there was shade, and green leaves and cool ground, the animals began to arrive. First, it was the birds and the small creatures, drawn to this improbable patch of green rising out of the empty sandbars. Then, larger animals followed, crossing the water toward the trees. The dead land was becoming a living forest, and almost no one beyond the island had the faintest idea it was happening. The secret forest for nearly 30 years, the wider world had absolutely no idea that any of this was taking place. Jadav Payeng grew a forest in near total secrecy, not because he was hiding it, but simply because no one thought to look. Because the land was abandoned and unwanted, he never needed anyone's permission to do what he was doing. He built himself a small house right inside the growing forest, and he lived there with his wife and their 3 children, raising a family in the middle of the wilderness he was creating. He was, in every real sense, a forester, tending and protecting a genuine forest reserve, except that he had no title, drew no wage, and the forest he cared for appeared on no map and in no government record. Year by year, the trees grew denser and taller and wilder around his home. And beyond the shores of Majuli, no one knew his name or had any idea what one man had quietly built out of sand. And then, in 2008, the forest gave itself away. A herd of around 100 wild elephants crossed the river and pushed into the trees, seeking shelter after they had damaged some homes in the villages nearby. When Forest Department officials came searching for the elephants, tracking the herd across the island, they walked into something they could not explain. On a sandbar that every record said should be nothing but bare sand, they found a vast, dense, thriving wilderness, and not one of them had known it existed. Around the same time, a local photojournalist named Jitu Kalita made his way into the forest, And there, he met the quiet man who had spent his life living inside it and building it. Khalida began to tell people what he had found, to photograph it and write about it, and the news started to spread outward from the island. After 3 decades of complete obscurity, the secret was finally out. India, and then the world, was about to learn the name Jadav Payeng. The Molai Forest, what the officials and the journalists had stumbled upon, was staggering in its scale. The forest that Jadav had grown by hand covers around 1,360 acres. To put that number into some kind of human perspective, it is significantly larger than Central Park in the middle of New York City. One man, starting with 20 bamboo seedlings and a bucket of water, grew all of it himself on a strip of river sand. And it is important to understand that this is not a plantation, not neat, orderly rows of a single crop. It is a true forest, dense, entangled, and genuinely wild. Over the decades, it became home to some of the most magnificent and endangered wildlife in India. Bengal tigers live in it. Indian one-horned rhinoceroses shelter in it. There are deer and monkeys and rabbits. There are vultures circling overhead, and more than 300 different species of birds move through its canopy. Animals that had not been seen anywhere in the area for decades quietly returned, finding refuge in the trees one man had planted for them. And every single year, that herd of around 100 elephants comes back across the water to spend months living among his trees, sometimes even giving birth to their calves in the shelter he created. The forest was named after the man who made it. Jadav's childhood nickname was Molai, and so people began to call the place the Molai Forest. And in growing it, Jadav finally achieved, on a scale he could never have imagined as a boy, the very thing that had first driven him out onto the sand. The roots of his thousands of trees now grip and hold the soil of Majuli, shielding the land from the floods and the erosion that had been steadily devouring his island his entire life. The forest he had planted out of grief for a pile of dead snakes had grown into something far greater, a living wall standing between his home and the river that had always threatened to wash it all away. The cost, it would be easy to imagine all of this as a peaceful, gentle idyll, a man living happily among his trees. But that is not the whole truth. The forest demanded a real price from Jadav, and at times it put his life in genuine danger. The wild animals he had welcomed did not politely respect the boundary between his forest and his livelihood. Jadav's main source of income was, and still is, the milk from his cattle and buffalo. But the same tigers that came to live in the safety of his trees also at times hunted and killed his livestock. Over the years, he lost around 100 of his cows and buffaloes this way, a devastating loss for a man of modest means. And yet he did not grow bitter about it. He refused to blame the animals. He said it actually gave him joy to watch the wildlife cross the shallow river toward his forest, to see them come home to the place he had made for them. He had built them a sanctuary, and he accepted the cost of it with a kind of grace that is difficult to fully comprehend. The real threat to the forest was never the animals. It was other people. The greatest danger had always come from loggers who wanted the timber and poachers who wanted the wildlife. In 2013, poachers came for the rhinos sheltering in his trees, and it was Jadav who spotted the danger and alerted the authorities in time to stop them. When men arrived to cut down his trees, he did not step aside. He stood in front of them, and he told them plainly that if they wanted to cut down his forest, they would have to cut him down first. After everything he had poured into that ground, every drop of water carried across the sand, and every year of his life given to it, he was entirely prepared to stand his ground and defend it with his own body. The forest man of India, once the world finally understood what this one quiet man had done, the recognition he had never sought and never worked for came flooding toward him anyway. It was a university vice-chancellor who gave him the name that would stick to him for the rest of his life. Speaking at Jawaharlal Nehru University, where Jadav was honored for his achievement, the vice-chancellor called him the Forest Man of India, and the title spread everywhere. His story raced across the country and then leapt around the globe. Filmmakers made their way to the remote island to capture what he had built. One documentary, simply called Forest Man, went on to win the award for Best Documentary at the Emerging Filmmaker Showcase at the Cannes Film Festival in 2014. carrying the story of an Assamese tree planter to one of the most famous stages in world cinema. Children's books were written about the boy who grew a forest, and they were translated into dozens of languages so that children on the other side of the planet could learn his name. And in 2015, the government of India awarded him the Padma Shri, the fourth highest civilian honor in the entire country. Think about the shape of that journey. A man from a poor, marginalized tribal community who had planted trees entirely alone for decades with no expectation of ever being noticed or rewarded, was now being honored by his nation at the highest levels. He received honorary doctorates from universities. He was invited to speak at events around the world. And through all of it, by every account, he stayed exactly the same person he had always been. He still lives simply. He still walks out every single day to tend his trees, just as he always has. He has spoken openly about wanting to expand his forest onto yet another barren sandbar, to go on fighting the erosion that still eats away at his island. His ambition was never fame, and it was never money. His ambition, from the beginning to now, was always simply more forest. More than 40 years after he pushed those first bamboo seedlings into the dead sand, Jadav Payeng is still planting, and he says he will until his last breath. He never set out to break records or save the planet. He only wanted to make sure no creature would die again for the lack of a tree's shade. And by showing up quietly every day for 40 years, he turned a lifeless sandbar into a forest full of tigers, elephants, and birdsong, alone, with no money and no one watching. It is the simplest proof that one ordinary person, with nothing but patience and refusal to quit, can change the face of the earth. If this story moved you, like the video and subscribe for more.